Thanks for watching my video today. My name's Don, and my channel's all about fishing after the age of 70. Today I want to talk about something that's really pretty personal for me, and I'm going to give it a title of Why I Still Chase Giants. You know, I believe there's some big fish here in Florida. In fact, I believe there's some giant fish down here in Florida. I also believe I've hooked a couple of them and not been able to get them into the boat. But you know, the older I get, the more I think about these giants. And I know the odds of a fish getting even 10 pounds are literally astronomical. You know, I've heard one in 1,000, one in 10,000, one in 1,000,000, and that's just to get to 10 pounds. Now, 10 pounds is a big fish. I've been fortunate enough to catch a few of them that big and even a little bigger. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about giants. I'm talking about fish in the 14 to 16 pound class or even bigger. I know they exist. I know they do. Just as sure as I'm sitting here, there's got to be somewhere, there's got to be a fish that's that big. The question is, how do I catch them? And I'll tell you, I've thought of all kinds of approaches. I think probably the odds are in your favor if you fish with live bait. Maybe a gob of night crawlers, maybe a big golden shiner, maybe a bluegill. I think any one of those three, maybe a crawfish. I mean, there's probably other things you could throw in the mix. Maybe one of those live baits would be all it would take, because I think for a bass to get that big, not to say that they're smart, but they could become very wary. In other words, they may have been caught a few times and they shied away from anything that looks suspicious. So a natural food, it goes without saying, would provide a better chance, at least, of maybe hooking up with one of them. But what about the tackle? I mean, come on. We all overpower the fish that we catch. I mean, I normally have 55 to 65 pound braid on quite a few of my rods. And you know, my argument is the same as everybody else's argument. If I'm going to get snagged up in the brush, or if I'm going to get a fish, big fish that goes into the pads or the reeds, I want to be able to pull him out. And you know, you can do that with braid. Unfortunately, I don't think braid is the answer. I don't think monofilament is the answer either. I think probably fluorocarbon's your best bet. Not that I think it's any better in terms of whether a bass can see it or not see it. I don't think that's even a factor. I just think that fluorocarbon is got the amount of stretch that's probably necessary to land a big fish. And I got to be honest with you, caught a lot of big fish, got them halfway to the boat, a couple of jumps, they're gone. I'm sure it's happened to you. And the reason for that usually is because they're throwing the treble hook. You're catching them on a big lure, big crankbait, and it's got 2, sometimes 3 treble hooks. And that bass comes up out of the water, shakes his head a little bit, and he uses the leverage of that lure against the hooks, and it doesn't take much for him to throw them. You know, when you combine the number of hooks on a big lure with the sharpness of those hooks, and most of them are laser sharp, it really doesn't take much for a big fish especially to throw the bait off. If you can keep them down, if you can keep them from jumping, you're probably better off. My guess is you're better off with smaller line. Now, can you land a big fish with 6, 8, 10 pound test line? Of course you can. In fact, if you get them in deep water where they don't have anything to really go to, you just wear them out. You set your drag so that they can pull when they want to pull, when they want to run, they can run. And you give them that opportunity, because the more they fight, they're fighting against a rod. The more they fight, the more tired they're going to get, and eventually they're going to come on board. So, in my mind at least, that's the equipment and that's the approach that you really need to take. Now, can you catch them on artificials? Well, yeah, maybe. Big plastic worm, big crawfish, maybe a big jig. I've caught some really big fish on jigs, especially, and plastics. But I really think it's going to come down to live bait. Another option might be a large spoon. I've done really well in some of the deeper lakes where I've gone out with big spoons, particularly in the middle of summer. Throw that big spoon out there and hop it a couple of times. Sometimes that's all it takes for a big fish to nail it. The question then becomes, where are you going to find these big fish, these giants? Well, you want my honest answer, it's probably going to be a lake that nobody fishes. And I say that because there probably aren't very many. In fact, most of them are probably on golf courses, or they're on, private land where nobody fishes. Maybe it's a farm pond, maybe it's a gravel pit, but it's going to be an area that hasn't been disturbed in quite some time. If you can find something like that, you've increased your odds dramatically. Because I think in most of these lakes, what you're going to run up against are fish that have been caught time and time again. And you'll know because when you pick them up out of the water, you'll see the marks from the different lures because, quite honestly, I don't think they ever heal. So just my thoughts, at my age, I'm no longer looking for trophies. I'm not looking for plaques. I'm not looking to win a tournament. What I'm looking for is a big fish, a giant fish. And if I've got to fish all day in a different way, in a different style, then maybe that's what it's going to take. But before I go, I want one bigger than the one I have. And the one I have is about 12 pounds. So it's going to have to be a big fish. So if you're like me and you're out there searching for giants, I wish you luck. If you have any tips, put them down below in the comments section. I'd love to read them. But thanks for listening. Give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks, and I hope you have a great day.